Welcome to Talk to Me. I'm your host, Brenda Warren, and I'm excited today because guess what, y'all? I have the CEO, the Chief Excitement Officer of Sparks of Fire International. She is a certified fearless living coach and trainer, host of the Power of Investing in People podcast, also hosting Hey Shay, What Do I Say? A Facebook live show. She has authored How to Get Your Voice Back and co-author of Fire Starters, the book project. Shay grew up with a father who was unwillingly drafted into the Army to serve in Korea. She inherited her father's don't have a choice mindset. Later, she realized she did have a choice and overcame abuse, addiction, depression, anger, low self-worth, being a bully, and being bullied. Today, Shay has proactively change that fear-based phrase, I don't have a choice, into determination, inspiring others to make fearless choices. She guides leaders to reignite their passion into more aligned purpose and transform into increased profit. She knows that if she can take care of her own traumatic experiences and transform them into treasures, then so can you. Shay, welcome to the show.
No, thank you so much for having me, Brenda. I'm honored to be here and excited. Let's get going. I love it.
You know, Shay, with all the different things that you are doing, like many of my guests, I am so excited to just discuss how you landed where you are now based on your background, realizing that you have a choice and now you're training or coaching others to realize they have a choice?
Oh, that's a great question. It's a really long story. So the short, quick version is I've been a hairstylist, a cosmetologist for 28 years. And I knew that at some point, like year 10, my shoulder started to hurt. And I knew that at some point I would need to do something different. And so I really got to thinking about what is it that I love about being a hairstylist, which I love doing the work, but even more so, I love having the conversations with my clients. I love helping them when they come in. It's not just about making them feel good with their hair, but they feel good with whatever they're telling me, whatever they bring to it, like the therapist, the behind the chair therapist, the bartender, whatever you want to call it. That's who we are. And for the longest time, I was in a relationship that was abusive. And during that time, I really just poured all of my energy into my clients because none of them knew I had what was going on at home. I told no one until it was over. And during that time of my life, that period of my life, I didn't think I had a choice. I thought I had to be in that relationship, that if I didn't, he was going to kill me. He would track me down and kill me. And truthfully, I still don't know if that wasn't the case. I believe he was capable of doing that. And when I got out of that relationship, I started to heal. And as I started to heal, my clients would come in and then we would talk about what was going on with them. They would say, "What's going on with you?" And I would say, "You're never going to believe this. I've been learning such and such and this and X, Y, and Z about myself." One of the things I started to say was, I learned that I have a hard time being vulnerable. I have a hard time talking about my feelings. I have a hard time expressing myself. And they're like, "You?" I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, because I've been so focused on you all of these years. When did you actually, when have I ever shared with you what my life has been like?" And they were like, "You're right. You haven't." And so I said, "So I'm learning that I am not, that I am myself am emotionally unavailable." And I thought, I have never been, like, my family was emotionally unavailable. So I don't not had examples of people who really know how to love openly and freely and express it. And they were like, "Wow, I had never thought of that."
Mm-hmm.
And then they would go, away for, 4 to 6 weeks or a week or, whenever I would see them again. And they would come back and they would say, because of what you told me and the things that you did with yourself and the conversations, how you shifted, I tried it too, and talked to my husband or talked to my mom or talked to my kid. And they're like, it's so different.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe I'm onto something here. Maybe all of this stuff that I have gone through wasn't all for nothing. Maybe there was a reason that I went through that. And as soon as I said that, I had probably 5 women that I met who had been in an abusive relationship. And I just kept talking to them as if I wish someone had talked to me. And I got them pulled out of it. And I was like, maybe this is what I'm meant to do, is really help people out of their own shell and talk to them in a way that they wished someone had talked to them before.
So as you began this journey and realized that you had a natural talent for coaching, what steps did you take to actually begin to make the transition from armchair therapist and stylist to professional coach that could really help people get past their stuck points?
Great question. So what really was important was for me to keep sharing those stories to my clients, because they were encouraging me. And I look back now and I was like, wow, nobody's ever encouraged me growing. Like, my parents didn't do that growing up. So I really, they were so beneficial to me, like more than I ever realized. How what they said to me, like, oh, you should write a book, you should be a coach, you should become a speaker, motivational speaker, all these things, that they spoke life into me. And so I did those things. So the first thing I did, I wrote a book. And I didn't know that I was going to write a book. I just happened to sit down one day, was working on my website. I had actually hired a coach to help me with a coaching business. He said, you don't need to be certified. We'll just take what you do and we'll put something together. And I was like, okay, great. And he said, but I really need you at some point. Probably several months in, he was like, I need you to really write what your website is going to say. And I thought, well, isn't that why I hired you? And so I thought, I don't really know what I'm going to do as a coach. I just kind of have an idea. And, I had written this book, and the book was really about getting your voice back. It was about being able to take that inner negative voice that we all have and shift it from being negative to something that's positive and empowering. So I thought, well, if we do that and start there as a communication, maybe that's what I am, some sort of communication coach. And basically what happened was, as I went on a search on how to really get clear on what it is that I do. And I happened to just stumble upon this course that they were offering in Nashville on literally that. What was the title of it? Now I can't remember. Darn it. It was something like, clarify your message for your website. And I was like, yes, that's what I need. And I had started really in several years from the time of my ex's car accident to the time I was at this place in Nashville was just stepping out of my comfort zone on a regular basis and trying new things and putting myself to be vulnerable just so I could express myself, so I could learn about how I do things, where I shut down, that type of thing. And at this particular conference, there was another life coach there, and her name is Rhonda Britton. She had her own TV show. She was on Oprah. She's won Emmys. And here she has a life coach certification program for fearless living. And when I met her, she said, yeah, I help people step out of their comfort zone. I was like, oh my God, that's what I've been doing. This is a no-brainer. And I just went, okay, God, I get it. Thank you for opening that door. And she's like, yeah. So when we were talking, she said, so who did you get your certification through? I said, oh, I didn't. And she goes, oh, And I said, do you think I should have a certification? She's like, well, I have a certification program.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, how long is it? And she said, a year. And I was like, a year? Do I have a year to invest? Number one. And then the next thought was, well, I'm going to be a year older, whether I do this or not. So let's see let's check this out. And she said, well, this January, there's a conference in LA. If you want to come out and see what we're about, you can start there. And then what you learn from that, it's called a Fearless Conversations, which went along with my whole communication coach. She said, if anything, you can just take what you learned from there and apply it to your own business. And I said, okay, sounds good. And so I went in January, and within the first 2.5 hours, I was like, where do I sign up?
Mm-hmm.
I felt so much support, as if I was sitting in a hug. It was,
Good.
and I thought, this is what I've been needing. This is what I've been lacking. Where do I sign up? And I started just 2 months later. And now I'm also a certified fearless trainer as well. And so I teach workshops and things like that. And I go into companies and teach for whether it's a couple of hours or a day or an hour. So yeah, so that's a part of the story of how everything has just kind of transitioned.
And when you wrote the book, Shay, and finding your own voice, how has that book, in your estimation, helped other women find theirs, or
Mm,
men even?
yeah. So the book itself is a journal based book.
Okay.
So it has like action steps to take. And it's helped me because I believe that as entrepreneurs, we wear many hats, right? And sometimes now entrepreneur is a buzzword. So it's like, oh, everybody is an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
So to get into to get in the door to some places, you have to have the next thing, which we know could be a podcast, could be a book. And I've noticed that when I say, well, let me send you a book, or let me, bring my book with me, or, I can bring copies of my books and give it to your team. They're like, oh, you have a book.
Yeah.
And there's something about a book that really is it's almost like it's leaving a legacy. That's not necessarily my legacy, but it's leaving a piece of me in a book for that person to take, to do those action steps and to kind of help transform their own life. So their voice now gets to be heard in a different way.
That I understand. Actually, I want to just stick right here with the book for just a few minutes because I have a couple of questions
Yeah.
based on what I heard you say. Now, did you finish your book before or after your certification?
I finished it before, and let me tell you about the writing process. Most people write their book over a period of time, and I had started writing my book many years ago, and I remember, and I was writing chapters, like, oh, this is a great chapter, and I would write a story, and then I'd say, okay, that's the chapter. And one day, as I was writing something, I just felt like God said in my spirit, this is not your first book, so put it down. And I went, okay. And right after that, my mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I really had to focus on taking care of her. And when 14 months she was gone, it was probably 2 months after she passed away. My my coach had said, you really have to clarify your message for your website. So go write.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, there was this in my spirit again that said, you have to go to a coffee shop and write today. And I was like, okay, got it. So I go to the coffee shop. I'm sitting there. The internet is not working. I can't access my Google Docs in order for what my coach had sent me that I needed to fill out as kind of a guideline. So I'm like, okay, what do I do? Well, let's see. I'll just open a Word document, start writing, and see what happens. And about 6 hours later, I sit back and I went, I think I just wrote a book. I think I just wrote my first book. And I was like, wow. Wow. And when I was thinking about the title of that, I had actually spoke at a battered women's shelter 2 years prior to that. And the next morning I woke up, you know how you sometimes do your best thinking in the shower, right?
Right.
So the next day I'm in the shower and out of the blue, I hear How to Get Your Voice Back. And I was like, ooh, that's a great name for a title of a book. And I wrote it down, didn't think anything of it. Coaching, book writing, none of that was really on. I mean, even though I was kind of writing chapters, it wasn't really in my awareness, in my thought process. So after I wrote it the next day, and I was like, I had a title I wrote. And the next day I'm like, well, what was I thinking? It's going to be called How to Get Your Voice Back. And yeah, that's how it was. It's totally different than most people's process.
And now now you've written a book, you hadn't gotten your certification yet though. And now once you got your certification and looking back, would you have done something different from your book? Or is that where your next book that you co-authored came in?
That's a good question. Would I have done something different? No, I have the opportunity to now to know lots of other authors, lots of other coaches. And it seems like people who write a book is that their first one is kind of like the throwaway, right? Like their first album, right? Back to, in music, comparing it to a musician. Oh, their first album, I mean, it was okay. Their first podcast, I mean, it was okay. The first episode was okay. But you get better as time goes on. And so it was kind of like, what had I heard? Like, you have to get 100 no's before you get a yes.
Okay.
But so I thought, well, I'll just get the first no out of the way. So I just get the first book out of the way and then go on to the next. And I was actually done with my certification and had my book out and everything. And I hired a book coach to go through the self-publishing process, him and his wife held a self-publishing company, and, mom and pop. And I just really liked them after interviewing lots of other companies, lots of other people to see how I can get my book published. I even looked into doing it myself. And I was like, this is not my thing. I don't want to take away my energy that can be doing something that is my thing. Right. When I can hire someone that can do this, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah. And so I came across him. I met him through Facebook, and it was just immediate. As soon as we talked on the phone, immediate, like, I have to hire this guy. He actually thought he was interviewing me to see if I would be a good candidate for his podcast. And I found out 10 minutes before we had the conversation that this is what he does for a living. And I was like, wow, God, you divinely opened doors for me and connect me with the right people. And I said, okay. So by the time we were done with that first conversation, it's like, you ever have a conversation with someone and by the end of it, you're praying for each other? I'm like,
yes.
That's when That's when right? That's when when you're speaking the same language, your goals are not just about for you. Your goals are really for the kingdom. And I was like, I have to work with him. And so we became friends. Him and his wife and myself, we became friends. I've gone to, they live in Texas. And so I've gone to Texas and done speaking events for them. And they've come here to Kansas City and same thing. And so what is so profound about that is I had a friend, well, let me back up. I had a friend of mine who's another coach say, hey, why don't we facilitate this co-author book idea? And I was like, oh, I like that. I said, do you have a self-publishing company that you want to work with? And he said, no, I don't. And he has a book out himself, this other coach.
Okay.
But he didn't have a company. And I said, well, are you okay with me pulling in my friend, who did my book? And he was like, sure. So I pulled him in. We had one meeting. And then the coach and we were going to meet a couple more times. He he went away. He didn't return my phone calls. He ghosted me. He did everything. And I was like, oh, okay. And this went on for like several months. It's been 2 years 2 years now. I still haven't talked to him, which is crazy to me. But he, and I thought him and the self-publishing guy went together.
Mhm.
And the self-publishing guy and I finally talked, and he thought that we cut him out. And I was like, no, I haven't talked to him either. So he said, well, I'm going to go with the project because this is what I do. And I said, go for it. Well, just a few months later, he called me back. He's like, I want you in this book. And I went, oh, okay. And so I have a chapter in that book called Visionistas.
Mhm.
And then that was in November of 19. And then jump ahead to April of 2020. We're in the middle of the like shutdown.
Right.
And in the salon, we were deemed non-essential. So I am off work from the salon for the first time in my life for 2 months.
Right.
And in week 6, the self-publishing coach and I were talking, and we were doing our mastermind thing like we normally do. And he said, Shay, have you considered facilitating your own co-author book, like by yourself? And I went, what? Because it never crossed my mind, even though I brought the idea to him, it never crossed my mind to do it for me.
Right.
And he said, yeah, have you ever thought about that? And I said, well, if I did, it would be called #Firestarters. And the first one would be called How to Be a Spark of Hope in the Midst of Change. And then we do this and we do that. And he was like, okay.
Yeah.
And I have a roommate I live in 2 places. And so I have a roommate in one of my homes that I live in. And so I asked her if she would partner with me. And because her and I have talked about this for, well, probably 7 years prior to how when you meet people, sometimes you meet them on social media. And then years later, you're like, well, maybe we need to collaborate together.
Right. Right.
And this was our collaboration. And I came up with this whole plan to really like build a community and build a networking when we couldn't network anymore in person because of the virus. We could connect and network with each other inside a book and build
that
a
book
community.
is.
Yeah. And so the book is, so here it is, what it looks like now. Yes. And
I love that cover, and I love the title.
It's, it is just such a passion project, and I'll show you the back.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the authors on there. But this is what just flowed through me, just like my first book, this flowed through me too. As I was, from the time I talked to the book coach to the time I talked to my roommate, I was like, this is what this is. And so if you don't mind, may I read what's on the back of the book?
Please.
Okay. So it's called #Firestarters, is a collection of creative thought leaders who are collaborating, planning, directing, organizing, and creating new ideas to navigate change. They understand that a single match, if left alone, will fizzle out quickly. Therefore, when a match ignites another, they build a stronger fire. They start with a single spark that ignites hope, creativity, curiosity, fearlessness, connection, kindness, collaboration, mindfulness, community, acceptance, purpose, contribution, and love into the world. That single spark creates a ripple effect, then gains momentum and spreads like wildfire. They create a collective, positive, proactive shift in the world because they are the change they want to see. Together, they are fire starters.
And Shā Sparks, you are that single spark that started all of this. And I know it's a passion project because I hear it in your voice. And the thing that I know based on listening to you, being able to talk to you before, having listened to your podcast, seeing what you do on your Facebook show, that spark is just beginning. And I'm so excited to hear that you went with what you were hearing internally and then reached out and brought other people into the fold, especially other women, because oftentimes, people want to believe that women don't support women, but you are a true testament that there are women out there willing to help each other, be the spark that lets everybody light a fire and burn bright. And I always say, my light will not dim because your light shines.
Right.
And that's the thing I love about you, Shay, is that you're always been so giving and so free to support. With that in mind, what kind of person do you see as your ideal coaching client?
Mm. Great question. So things have really shifted for me. So when I first started, it was really a woman who had gone through some sort of trauma, typically like some sort of relationship, a divorce or something, and really kind of rebuilding their self-esteem, self-confidence to get back out there and kind of be independent on their own. And I have said that I transform trauma into treasure because that's what I've done with my own life.
Mhm.
And I started a podcast, and I went to a conference for podcasters, and I met a gentleman there, and he was a veteran.
Mhm.
And he said, Shay, have you thought about working with veterans? And I was like, not really, but that's interesting that you suggest that, because they keep showing up in my life and I keep meeting them everywhere I go. So that's really interesting that you say that. And I just really started praying about it. I was like, okay, God, if this is what you want for me, then I accept. And here we go. And as soon as I said that, doors have continued to open, not just with veterans, but now I'm working with the military, and speaking at Air Force bases and other military functions and with veterans. And so I don't necessarily know if it's more about the coaching one-on-one anymore, or if it's more about like groups.
Okay.
And it's really anyone who has a transition either they've experienced, or they're going through right now, or they know that they're trying to prepare for it. And that transition could be a divorce, maybe from retirement from military back to civilian life.
Right.
Maybe it's even a job change, or it is, I don't want to say, well, yeah, unemployment into maybe starting their own business. There's so many different facets that this covers, but I just see it really shifting, and it's just progressed.
I think the part about all of us that are in this type of business is that we are able to pivot and shift as necessary to support the client that shows up. At
Yeah.
least for myself, that's what I've noticed for me. Shay, tell me, what is one tip you give someone that was listening now that could spark them to be a fire starter?
Hmm. One tip. Let me just see what I'm getting.
Okay, take your time.
A journal. I think journaling is one, therapeutic. I think it's also a wonderful way to be able to, have some introspection on being able to look back and acknowledge our own resiliency. Look at what we were going through, and now look where we're at. And being able to pat yourself on the back, said, I did that. I got through that.
That's true.
And if I can do that, or in other words, if God can bring me through it, what else can he do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shay, with all the things you are doing, can you tell me how is that helping you live your best life now?
So I have been having this, I do clubhouses and Instagram lives the last probably month or so on Monday nights. And we talk about this quote, and the quote is, be fearless in pursuit of what sets your soul on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, guiding others sets my soul on fire. So is it your purpose leads to your passion, or does your passion lead to your purpose? And for me, it's both, right? It's like they fuel each other. And, one thing lit a spark, lit a spark in me, ignited that spark. And it's just so exciting to see where it goes. The connections that I make, I can't even explain it, except when I surrendered and let go of control of what I thought, quote unquote, I was supposed to do, and just leaned into where God was taking me, you can't help but be living your best life and being fired up about it.
That's true. I believe that. Shay, how would someone get in touch with you if they wanted to get you to speak, to coach, to just get your book? Can you give us your information regarding that?
Absolutely. So best of all, I think email would probably be the best. You can email me at Shay, that's HEYSHA at ShāSparks.com. You can go to my website at ShāSparks.com. You can find me on all social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Clubhouse, YouTube even, at ShāSparks.com, or Shā Sparks, and Shā is SHA, and then Sparks. I'm trying to think what else. That's pretty much it. I mean,
so ShāSparks.com is your main website.
Yes.
Shay, do you have an actual club on Clubhouse, or are you just moderating with others right now?
No, I have a club too. It's called #Firestarters.
#Firestarters. We'll make sure we put all that in the description, because I want to make sure people that want to reach out to you can get it, because I want them to get their fire started by talking to Shay. Shay, thank you for being on the show with me today. I always enjoy speaking with you. And if you would just stand by for a few minutes while I get you in the audience to thank a veteran. If you look above my head, everyone, there is a www.nebcc.org/projects. That is where you go to get the opportunity to thank a veteran. You will find prompts under the basket brigade, one for each month of the year. In those writing prompts, they just give you the opportunity and the inspiration to thank a veteran. Remember, there is some young man or woman standing on the wall, standing in the gap for you and I, so that we can live the life that we love, so that we can live our best lives, y'all. And what will happen is in 2022, January 1, all of those thank yous will be received by those veterans in the form of a book with illustrations inside of a gift basket full of goodies. It is our way of saying you matter and thank you. So be a part of the thank you. Go to www.nebcc.org/projects and take the time. Doesn't cost you a thing, y'all, to thank a veteran. Shay, do you have any closing thoughts for our audience today?
Be fearless in pursuit of what sets your soul on fire.
Thanks, Shay. I'm so excited you were here with me as my guest today, because my fire has been started every time I talk to you. I never leave without having the spark in my day.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, everyone, that's another episode of Talk to Me. As I always like to remind you, the choices you make today will be the reality you live tomorrow. Choose wisely. Be blessed.